All right, let's see how we're doing here. So there it goes. Stop. Mhm. Great. Had a little bit of a tech glitch there. I'm not quite sure what was going on. If you hit play twice, had a little bit of a tech glitch there. There we go. So welcome. Welcome everybody. All right. So everybody has been running just a teeny bit late, I've noticed. I think it's the March thing. So we're going to get started in about 5 minutes. If you can let me know if you can hear me, that would be great. And that way we can fix any tech glitches or problems getting in. So it might take just a minute to load up. Let's see. Do you see the algebra? Arrow on the video. Oops. Great, thank you, Kathy. Ooh, I typed too fast. Got some typos going there. Great, Kathy. I'm so glad you can hear me. We've been, our internet's been a little slow. I think just because we went from getting over a foot of snow Thursday to 65, 70 degree weather yesterday, and the ground is just saturated, and our lines in the ground are a little bit, a teeny bit slow. So I just want to make sure that, you know, if you are trying to hear me and you can get in, that would be great. We do have a couple minutes here before we're going to, until we're going to start. And so we're going to be kind of patient and we'll work on this a little bit. Make sure Jessica can find it. Oh, great. Okay. Then I'm going to delete that text there. The one thing for those of you who are here early, and I'm going to mention it again is that the sound has a delay of about a minute or two. So there's sometimes where you're going to type something in and I'll comment on it and it'll feel a little bit of a delay. That's just with any video conferencing. That's just one of the things we're going to have to deal with. So for those people just coming in, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. And feel free to introduce yourself. I love the way you guys, when you introduced yourself, you were letting people know teaching 8th grade math or whatever else you were teaching there. And Jessica, I hope you are also enjoying that nice warm weather that we're having right now. It sounds like it might take just a minute. It might cool off just a little, but I'm hopeful that it'll warm up here and stay warm for a little bit longer. I just washed the kids' snow pants and I'm hoping that they are put away for the season, but we will see. You never know at this part of the country. I'm seeing people coming into the website. They're just getting here now, and we're not quite at 8:30 yet. So welcome everybody who's just getting here. And I'm just moving that box a little bit so that when people come in, they know that they are in the right place. There we go. All right. So welcome, welcome. I hope people are able to get in, to get it playing. There we go. And great. I'm so glad, Jessica. I hope it stays like this too. It's so nice. My kids have been outside all day. Welcome, Jody. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math, 6th grade keyboarding, computers, and accounting. Wow, you are spread kind of thin. It sounds like, if I had to guess, you might be at a smaller district where you have to really, really work on that. So wonderful. Welcome. I'm so glad everybody's able to get in here. I know this time of year can be really busy, especially when it's so nice out. Great. I see on the analytics, people are still coming in. I'm just trying to think if there we go. I'll make sure they know to hit play. Small school, 200 kids, K-12. Wow. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It seems, I have always taught in big schools. So I've always had the privilege of kind of being able to focus on one thing. Except for my first year teaching, there was a teaching shortage in Florida, and I had 4 preps, and I taught during my prep time. So it was one of those where they just were in desperate times, and I didn't have children yet, so that got to fall on me as a first year teacher. It's kind of crazy, but it was a great way to jump in and figure it all out. All right. It looks like people are getting in here, and I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. Hello, Heather. So you're teaching special education algebra. That is a different challenge altogether because those kids have a really hard time retaining those algorithms, those rules. That can be really tricky. I've taught a co-teaching class, or I've had mainstream the special ed education students, but I've never had just a class of special ed students all at once. So I was always able to partner them up with somebody else who is stronger. So I think that's a different struggle when you have them all in one classroom. I taught in Salvador, Colorado. Enjoyed it. That's funny, Jody. All right, so it is just after 8:30. And so what we are going to do is go ahead and get started a little bit. If people come in, I'll go ahead and welcome them as well. I know everybody's busy, and it is really that kind of time where we are putting kids to bed and getting all that done. Yeah, my kids just went, my little two went to bed. I have teenagers, so they're still up, but they've been told to stay off their devices and make sure I get the Wi-Fi. Well, hello, Jen. Good evening. Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and personal finance for seniors in Michigan. So where are you, Jen? I am in Grand Rapids. So I would love to know where you're from. It'd be kind of cool if maybe we could meet up for some coffee or something. Us teachers definitely have to stick together and help each other out when we can. So, yeah, and I don't know if you're teaching personal finance or computers, if you get to go to the McCall conference tomorrow or Friday, but I was invited to go, so I'm pretty excited that I get to go do that because it's right in my backyard this year. McCall, for anybody outside of Michigan, is the Michigan Educators with Technology. And so computer use and learning, I believe is what it is. So yeah, that keeps us, that's, oh, you're up in the UP. I love the UP. I just love, we spend a lot of time up there in the summer. So yeah, personal finance does sound fun. They don't teach that in a whole lot of schools down here. So let's go ahead and we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to be asking you guys, first of all, if you didn't get a chance to chime in, I think almost everybody did. Let us know what you're teaching, and if you don't mind, what grade you're teaching. I think everybody did that, at least to some level, whether they were middle school, junior high, high school. That really helps us to know. It sounds like this group is more diverse, which is wonderful. And it sounds like you guys have some definite overlap where you could help each other out, which seems really cool. So we're going to talk about fitting this Algebra 1, some skills for fitting Algebra 1 all into 1 year, which can be quite tricky. And so just before we get started, whoops, went too quick. My name is Jeanette. A lot of people, I feel like I've talked to a lot of you. I recognize some of your names, and I know we've got a couple of our members here tonight. And then, but I taught Algebra 1 for 17 years in some capacity or other. So I started down in Florida in Newport Richey, and I taught at River Ridge High School there. Loved that experience. That was a phenomenal experience. And I had the privilege of teaching both the honors classes and the lower level. So for 10th grade, I taught all 10th grade that year, those first 2 years, and I taught mostly the Algebra 1 for the kids who needed to take it over 2 years. I also taught Algebra 1 to the 9th graders and the Algebra 2 to the 9th graders for those advanced students. So I was really all over the board with those kiddos. So, and then when I moved to Michigan, I started in 8th grade, and my algebra experience was just with the 8th graders. In Michigan, they don't require 8th grade to be, they don't require 8th grade to be algebra. So for our district, they chose that only those kids who they deemed ready through testing or other situations or parents' recommendations, those ones. So I had those kids, and then I moved to the 9th grade, and I was good with those kids who struggled. So, you know, that means I get those kids who struggled. So I've kind of had all of the pieces, and then we did a lot of technology integration in my district as well. So, yeah, it's been really a good experience to then end up making this website. Yay for Michigan. Yes, Kate, I agree. So yay. I love my Michigan vacationing too, and I love my lakes, our big lakes here. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, the resolution. So let me show you what I mean by this. This has always been an issue because when you log in YouTube, automatically, let me hit play there. YouTube will automatically default this to be a lower resolution. And so if your resolution, if it looks blurry at all, you just go ahead and click on the 720 or the HD here, and you'll see right away that it will help right away your resolution. So I did that with the webinar we did earlier today. So mine's already all set. The second thing I would love to show you is on this chat box. Yeah, Kate, I agree. Alicia, I don't know if it's Alicia or Alicia, but I teach resource 8th grade math. So you might have something in common here. We've got some people that are teaching all special ed math as well. And then 8th grade math. I think our 8th grade math teachers might be our winner here. And so, but when you're in this box here, you're going to see this little chat here. If you do, I have it on a different computer so I can keep up with what you guys are doing while I'm talking. But if you see this little double bubble here, this will allow you to connect with somebody else that's in the chat. And so you can, message them. I do have teachers that will hook up because they teach similar things or they're dealing with similar things and they would just love somebody who understands where they're at. Feel free to use that to connect with somebody or to ask me something confidentially. Just know that if you do ask me something confidentially during the webinar, obviously I'm going to be presenting. And so I will get to you though right after. If you at any time want to contact me individually, you can just also use my email address and you can always contact me using this email address right here at the top. And then at the end, I have a link to the certificate of completion that we're going to set up with a Google. It's a Google form. So you just fill in your name and email, and then I'll make sure tomorrow morning that you get a certificate that you can just print off and use however your district would like you to use. And then also some districts want, my signature on something saying you attended. Well, I have proof right here in the chat boxes, or even that you filled out that form would be proof that you were here. So I have no problem with that. If your district needs something like that, please just send it my way using that email address at the top of the webpage, and I'll give that back to you as soon as I'm available to. Make sure everybody was welcomed. So what we're going to cover is we're going to understand those standards in order to save time. We are going to talk about creating problem solvers. This is the biggest thing that is so hard because we want to, I lost my mouse there. Oh, there we go. We want to make sure that those students are really being good problem solvers first and foremost. And then resources to make teaching and creating those problem solvers a little bit easier. And then we'll talk about creating a personalized plan to get that all done. So there we go. So let's go ahead and start with the standards. So I sent out earlier the semester 1 skills list, whether it was for the regular or for the 8th grade. And I am curious, were you able to get that download and everything is all set? Because I just sent out a new copy this morning and I wanted to make sure that you were able to download those. I did get a couple emails from people telling me that they were having a little bit of an issue with downloading those. Get a little drink of water there. So here's the Algebra 1 skills list, and maybe let's go to the 8th grade one. We've got a lot of 8th grade teachers here. So if I go, hopefully you were good. You were okay. You were able to. Thank you for letting me know. I just, technology is always switching. So I'll update one thing and it'll mess something else up. And I like to keep it as easy and not stressful. Teaching is stressful enough. We don't need a free download to be stressful. So as we look at the skills list and also some of the standards, we'll realize that they really do overlap quite a bit. And so one thing, some people were emailing me and they're like, well, what's so different here between the 8th grade and the Algebra 1 skills list? And I'll be really honest with you, not a whole lot. There is one section, and we'll go over that in just a minute, that is completely not covered in 9th grade, and that would be Pythagorean theorem and the radicals. But if your students were anything like mine, they needed that review. So that is embedded in there. But then you would need to be able to prove the Pythagorean theorem and do the distance formula and the midpoint formula. That's just covered in 8th grade, but not covered in the 9th grade standards. Everything else they ask us to teach in the 8th grade, in addition to the 9th grade, kind of overlaps in a really nice way. So that would be great. That makes it a lot easier for us. So when we take a look, I'm going to go back to that presentation. There we go. This top little blurb here, let's see if I can make it just a little bit bigger. There we go. So this top blurb here, it says, compare properties of two functions, each represented in a different way, algebraically, graphically, numerically, in tables, or by a verbal description. So we want them to be able to calculate slope and compare the properties of two functions differently. Now, for most of us, if we're talking about a slope unit, or we're talking about calculating slope, or we're teaching them how to calculate slope, yes, we probably teach them, the change in the rise over the change in the run, but we probably also want them to be able to compare and do it from some different types of situations. So they go on and they give us an example. Given a linear function represented by a table of values and a linear function represented by an algebraic expression, determine which function has the greater rate of change. Now that's the 8th grade standard that they were supposed to do in 8th grade, or if you're teaching algebra in 8th grade, they're supposed to be able to do in that algebra class. The 9th grade standard, or the high school standard for calculating slope, calculate and interpret the average rate of change of a function presented symbolically or as a table over a specified interval. Estimate the rate of change from a graph. So the one for the high school does involve parabolas, and other polynomials. And then they want you to look at it for a specific domain. So if at this domain, which one rises faster? But really, if we're looking at the linear function, and what this is here is this is Unit 2, Week 5. So in Unit 2, Week 5, Unit 2 is all linear. And so for this, if you look at these two standards, they're very, very similar. And that's why they're both listed at the same time. So when we go, well, let's go here first. So the standards. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I don't know about you, but I started looking up when I started this journey. Gosh, it feels like years and years ago, but my district was really generous with some training for a Common Core, and I got a chance to read over the standards and look at them. And so then I started looking online and trying to find samples of these. And I don't know if you've ever done that, but it gets really overwhelming. They have so many different samples and so many different ways that the question could be given, and so many different assessment examples, that I started thinking, oh my goodness, I need to teach this all of these different ways. And I need to make sure my students have seen every one of these problems. Yeah, Kathy, I'm not sure if that's just you. I just saw that. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if I'm not speaking into the mic or not. How is everybody else doing for sound? Heather says she still has the volume. So I just was wondering if that's anybody else, or Kathy, it might be one solution might be to turn up that resolution, or even turn it down, because if your Wi-Fi can't handle the resolution, then it's going to slow down other things as well. Okay, so Heather, you're still good on sound too. Okay. Well, shoot, that's frustrating. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure, Kathy. Okay, so we'll try to figure that out. We'll see what we can do to get you back up. I'm gonna think about that for a minute. But I noticed the more I tried to show my students everything that could possibly be on an assessment, the more I was frustrated when I looked over the results. So what I mean by that is I'd look at the results and I'd be like, my kids did great on this standard, on this. They understood this concept really good. Let's say it was systems of equations. They understood it so well. And then they get on the standardized test and they see the systems of equations different and they bomb it. And it's so frustrating. So I found the more I tried to prepare my kids for the assessment by showing them every single example, the worse they did, because they were learning just the facts. They weren't learning the problem solving. And so one thing that I would strongly suggest, I'm not saying they never can see them, but let's do it in a different way where we're not overwhelming the kids, where we're not overwhelming ourselves, and we're kind of going deeper into one type of problem, and then we can really build that problem solving. So when they see something worded differently, they can really apply it and figure that out. So we talked about the standards overlapping and already. So let's go in, and I would love to show you a couple resources and what I mean by this. So let's go. I keep changing my mind on which ones because there's so many fun things to talk about. But let's do this one here because we've got 8th grade. This is a brand new link. I know we've got a couple members here. This link just went live Sunday, and we have been adding an amazing amount of resources under this Algebra 1 extended resources. So when we talk about those 8th grade standards that need to be included in 9th grade, if they haven't already learned them in, I had the privilege, my students had Common Core 8th grade, so they came in with some of these skills already. If you're teaching it in 8th grade, they don't have some of these skills. And we are still working on, the lessons are all made. We're still proofreading quite a bit of them. So system of equation, we are proofreading, and they will be up by the end of the week. Functions, we have been pulling in. This is our longest extension. We did 8 lessons that would really go deep into the slope intercept form and all that stuff, because those 8th graders haven't practiced that yet. And then the radicals is the one that we would really need to add to the 8th grade algebra curriculum because of that Pythagorean theorem situation. So we've been adding these documents like crazy. So if you are a member, feel free to check back in the next couple of days because there will be more. We've just been adding those in Unit 10 and 11 documents as well. But let's go into exploring slope. So when we go in here, every one of my lessons has some sort of activity. So let's go ahead and blow this up so you can actually see it. There we go. So hopefully you can read it there. But all of the activities may not necessarily be, get out the poster board and the markers and let's create something. Or some of them are actual labs, hand-on labs, let's do the marbles down the slope. But you and I both know that most of our class periods are not long enough to afford the luxury of doing something that hands-on every day. So to still get that communication and discussion and problem solving, and to get kids connecting it with what they already know, we have gone ahead and created kind of the activities that would be great to do with a pair share or some other communication. And then the nice part is we always put these activities into our PowerPoint. So if you're teaching it, you've got it on the board and you can kind of adjust your time as necessary, because I know some of your class periods are so short. I've been working with one of our members. His class periods are only 42 minutes. So we've been really working together to kind of adjust some of the things to fit them, because most of my lesson plans are made for a 60-minute lesson. So these activities help the students, things that we connect because we get it, they tend to not connect. So, what is the wall? Which axis is that? What's the floor? Which axis is that? And I would go on to ask them, maybe, why would I want you to know that? So, oh, Heather, I just saw your post. Yours is also 42 minutes. I've gotten some good, his name is Tom, and we have worked really hard to come up with some ways where he can still get in some of the applications like we're talking about here and the practice. Because obviously with 8th and 9th graders, the amount of homework, if they don't get some sort of confidence in your classroom, the amount of homework that they complete, for most of us, there are exceptions. I've taught in both levels, so I get it. But for most of us, if they don't feel confident in the classroom, that homework completion rate really can drop quickly. But then we'll go through, the activity is great, but if they don't connect it to the practice and the fluency, and that's where the practice comes in, then really we're not helping to solidify it into their memories. So if they can take the activity and apply it to these different ways of saying it, apply it to some of these story problems, and this is one of the longer practices because determining the slope just from the graph, these can be a little bit tricky, and they need the repetition to see the undefined slope and so forth. And then the points. And this works out really well for kids to be able to connect it. This was one of them where when we were brainstorming, my team and I, we decided to do this practice a little bit longer than most because we noticed that kids needed a little bit more practice with the positive and negatives, and it gives a teacher time to work on that as well. So Jody, yours is pretty short too. So 48 to 50 minutes and 40 minutes. Wow. So Dave and Barb, I'm trying to remember. Up at the top, I think you said who was here, but yeah, 40, that's really pushing it. So, some of the strategies we've talked about is, taking that bell ringer, maybe making it only one question. My exit slips are usually only one question, but it's really good information. He does have access to technology, so he would just have people do it with the technology and turn it in so that he could still get a sense before they walk in the next day without it taking up the class time for the exit slips. And then it's kind of like picking and choosing and finding a balance. So instead of finding a balance all within one class period, maybe you look at your week and you're like, well, this much fluency and this much application. So because with that application, it builds. Thank you so much, Barb. Jody, for helping me out. Thank you, Barb. And, finding that balance can be, really tricky. So instead of thinking of finding the balance all in 1 week, we can find, all in 1 day, we can find it over 1 week. And that's been really helpful as well, because we know when they see those applications, they start seeing themselves as problem solvers. They're given more leeway to solve things in non-traditional ways, which really helps people feel more confident to try some of these. So that's really helpful. So sometimes I will have them, when I'm trying to get them to be problem solvers and be able to apply these to the very wide range of problems on the assessment, I'll ask them to write questions that use that topic. So I purposely left this practice page open. So I might just say, what's a story problem you can do with these numbers here? So from point M to point N, what story problem could you give me with those exact numbers? And they have to get creative and come up with something. If I ask these questions right after they're feeling successful, I'll notice they'll come up with harder questions that really help. The other question I really like is I will sometimes find a bunch of the sample assessment problems all dealing with the same topic. So sticking with slope, maybe there are a bunch of slope story problems, graphs, tables, all of those things. And I will ask them to make a chart, just 3 simple columns. How are they the same? How are they different? And what do you notice? Or what questions do you have? Or what doesn't make sense? Clarification needed, depending on the problems that we're looking at. And so what I'll have them sometimes pair up and they have to find similarities, but then they also have to find differences. So I want them to start using that math vocabulary, kind of forces them to, and that is really, really helpful. And then this simple question here, how does this fit with this being whatever topic we're talking about, fit with what we've learned yesterday, last week, last year? When I started asking this question and getting the kids feedback, because I was in a large district and because I taught in a 9th grade situation, around here, a lot of the charter schools or private schools end in 8th grade. So I would get students from maybe 5 to 10 different teachers all in one classroom, which can be really hard. So I started asking them, how does this fit with what you've learned last year? And I would get all this different vocabulary or even trigger words that the last teacher used. You know, for slope, slope is easy and fun. Remember, rise over run was one of them that last year one of the teachers said all the time. So if I said slope is easy and fun, they were able to connect it to what the teacher did the year before. And it made it not feel like new learning. It made them feel smart, which always helps. And I like what Heather wrote about that. And it helps them see the relationships and connects the learning. Because we know the brain research. I love learning about this stuff, how the synapses connect. And if the synapses connect, they not only remember, but later they can recall and retrieve that information. Because when that information goes in, you know, it's just like when something's on the tip of your tongue and you just can't recall it. That's that retrieval piece. And the more the information is connected with those synapses, the easier it is for it to be retrieved. And so every time we help a kid make a relationship or make a connection, we're going to help them to retain that information and keep it in their long-term memory and have easier retrieval. So it's really fascinating to me. The more that I learned about this and the more I started asking these questions to help them make connections, the more, the less reteaching that I had to do. And it really surprised me because it takes a couple extra minutes and they weren't practicing as long because this took maybe 5 minutes, but they were still able to remember it longer. So the payoff was a little bit of time here, but then I wasn't having to reteach everything later. So that was huge. That really helped me out a ton. So my big question for you is, do you tend to spend more time with fluency, or do you tend to spend more time with those application or activity aspects of your classroom? So where do you spend the most time? If you had to do a little bit of self reflection, do you spend more time with your fluency, or are you spending more time with the application and problem solving? I know there's a delay, so I apologize for the quiet. I was just waiting for the chat box to catch up with the video. And another question I have for you is, what questions do you ask your kids to help them make the connections to what they already know or what they've already learned? Right, Kathy, isn't it the truth? Try to do both. You got to do both to really get that real learning there. Right. Heather, yeah, definitely fluency. My kids have gaps that I'm desperately trying to fill, and I can relate to that. Absolutely. I would challenge you to kind of find a little bit of balance with that. My students, I noticed the more I worked on just fluency, the less they were motivated. I don't know if that's an issue in your classroom. Sometimes it's not, But in mine, I had such a high level of at-risk kids that without the problem solving and without me being able to say, wow, that is phenomenal, they really got a little deflated with it. Jody, I try both all the time, but spend more time on application. Good. So they're probably, it says, you're saying you try both all the time. So I'm sure they're getting that fluency practice too. I think if you had to lean one way, that'd probably be the better way to do it. I think I spend more time on fluency, but I want to bring some more application into the lessons. That can be a hard transition for every teacher, Jessica. So go slow, do one question where if you take it out of a textbook and just remove the textbook, kids won't realize that they don't seem to realize that it's a textbook question. So sometimes I would just go ahead and find one good story problem that I was going to maybe assign anyway, or that they need to understand. If you have a textbook still, I noticed a lot of districts are moving away from them, but and just typing it onto a separate sheet of paper and sharing that with the students and letting them, pair share and work through it near the beginning of the class before they get all that exercise in is a nice way to transition to more applications. Fluency for sure. Okay, Barb, my students are the struggling learners, SPED and repeaters. Yes, they absolutely need the fluency practice. They get frustrated easier. You might want to do the same thing, just putting a little bit of that application in where they can feel like they're problem solvers and they can discuss it and figure it out. It may help depending on the personalities in your class and how I would get some SPED kids who are so deflated that wouldn't work with. And then I've had other classes where it really would work. So I guess it depends on what level your kids are at. Jody, I use fluency as well as moving and crossbody and random hangman to get their attention. I love that. I'm wondering if I'm always thinking of parent functions. For parent functions, I would say X squared and they'd have to stand up and do, the body show the big U there, kind of like the Y. It looked like we were doing the YMCA from the hall. But, I'd put those up on the board as fast as I could and make them all do it. They laugh, but, they always got those questions right. It goes into a different part of the memory. We try to do problem solving, but they do not want to do that. They shut right down. Barb, one thing, if you've got them shutting down, one thing I learned from doing the 3 acts lesson, and if you've not heard of those, go real quick. 3 acts is an amazing way. And if you've not seen that, there we go. Dan Meyer is his name. And he came up with the 3 acts. And I had the privilege of going to a conference that he ran. And he really does a good job. If you are having a hard time getting your problem solvers, he was too. He started with questions like, what's an answer that would be wrong? So instead of there's a million right answers to that. And that kind of allowed kids to be successful. And then he would say, well, everybody just guess. What's the right answer? And he might have a tower of pennies, whatever the question was that day. But everybody would guess. And he said that way everybody had an equal chance to be right. So it wasn't always just the smart kids being right, or it wasn't just you were always wrong. It was that this is fun. Everybody just guess, write it down. We'll put it on the board, and then everybody had a chance to be right. But I loved the question, and I've used it in my class. That's really worked well. It makes them analyze the question without being intimidated by the math. What's an answer that is obviously wrong? And they do like that. You guys have a lot. I love these comments. This is so fun for me. Try substituting students' names in for the problems. Kathy, I've done that too. Isn't that fun? Depending on the problem, it can really be a lot of fun. Heather, we're doing activities via concrete learning. For examples, we do balancing equations with algebra blocks. The sort of thing goes well and helps with some of the more difficult problem solving, right? We used to have little scales, like little plastic scales. And then they moved them down to the middle school. So the ninth grade building kind of lost their plastic scales because they were starting to do, the balancing equations at the middle school level. But I love that they actually moved. And I thought it was a lot more fun than just doing it on the paper, but the paper still helps, like the algebra blocks activity, that kind of stuff. Jen says, I spend more time on fluency than I'd like. In Algebra 2, it's tough to find meaningful application. I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Algebra 2 is tough. I've been asked a couple times, are you going to do an Algebra 2 site? And I'm not sure on that one. I think that would be really tough. There are plans to get going on it, but I'm worried about the activities because I think they're so important. And it really goes against my philosophy to not have them. So that'll be a little bit tough. Jody, I love the music. You said you do music a lot. That might be good for our special ed teachers. I've noticed I always have the kids sing the quadratic formula, and that is my favorite test to give. I have to tell you, it is my absolute favorite test to give because as they're writing it out and doing that, I can see their heads bobbing as they're singing it along. We always sang it. I've heard it. I'm a Michigan State grad, so I've heard it though I don't remember if it's the U of M or Notre Dame fight song, but both of them to me are not okay. So we did ours to Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and it works perfect. And that is so much fun to watch them take that test. In the YouTube videos, have you seen the one school where the teachers do all sorts of fun videos? My kids used to love them, so I should look those up and get those on the website because that would just be fun to have. Yeah, Jessica, it's a lot of fun. Absolutely. I have seen Colin's stuff. There's so many great things out there. So thank you so much for sharing all these. You guys are a fun group. So it makes it so much more fun this way to share both ways instead of feeling like I'm spewing at you. So we talked about those activities and the fluency balance, and you guys have been such a good discussion. I don't really think I need to go back over it. I would just encourage you that if you've got, we have so many people here with those short class periods that you figure out a way, or those special ed kids who really do need that fluency time. How do you balance that out? Because the activities, even though the kids don't like the problem solving, even if it's an activity where they, for example, exponents, I used to give them all the problems. I would just type them up like 10 problems. If we we're doing like powers of powers, I would type up 10 problems with the answers. And then my whole activity might just be, where's the pattern? So maybe that would be a good way to start with some of those special ed kids is give them the problem and the answer and ask them to analyze them. And that could be your activity. That is okay. It's just something different where they have to look at it and do something different. Barb, absolutely. I've done in the past, depends on how we're doing that school year with how the kids did in the units before, but we have created the videos for the quadratic formula. But I have a lot of at-risk kids who are like in foster care and that kind of thing. So ours are never on YouTube. We keep those private in Edmodo, but it is a ton of fun. Let's see. So when we're creating our plan now, so let's go back. Now that we've got some ideas on how to get through this and help them retain it, so we're not reteaching, you've got from now, maybe if you're in Michigan till June, we're till June 10th. But I know a lot of districts are done in May. So that's why I said, by May, you're going to take a look at that skills list. Let's see. There we go. We're going to take a look at that skills list. And I kind of coded it by unit. And the reason why I did that was so that when you go in here, whether or not you're a member, we've got some great ways for you to find stuff. So when we go through the semester list, I would definitely go through. Unit 1 is a review a lot of it is a review of some of the 8th grade standards or even 7th grade standards. So you may not need to hit unit 1 real well, but go through the rest and take a look at how the kids are doing and how they're not doing. Now this, and let's say you are on slope, just because we've been using that example. This is in unit 2, week 5, and it tells you up at the top there, unit and week. So unit 2, week 5, you can go here and down on the right-hand side, here's unit 2, week 5, and then that's got activities. These are all free activities for you. This kind of breaks down the curriculum. And I started doing this way before I started creating all my own worksheets, is I would find activities and things that really help kids understand and put them in here. These are all free things I found online. The problem with free things online is that a lot of times these links will go bad. And so if you ever find a bad link, feel free to let me know and I'll take it out of there. That can be really frustrating. I'm sorry, but they change all the time. So I found all these great lessons from, like, for example, PBS had great lessons, and then they went and changed all their links. Like all of them, they still have all the great lessons, but all the links are different. And so all the stuff that I linked to on here now then had to all be redone. So that's a big difference. The other thing is on the site, I noticed a lot of people didn't realize that I had put this here. If you look at the little viewing glass, let's say you want to look at slope, you can type that in there and it's going to give you everything with slope so that you can take a look at all the different lessons, all the different activities that might have the word, slope in it. If you're a member and you're logged in, it's going to show you all the handouts with the slope in there so that you'll be able to find everything. And then it's probably more than one page here if I even go older entries, and I can see even more. So if you're ever looking for a topic and you want to say, do I have any lesson plans on that? Just go ahead and hit that and you can search for anything. If you're a member, it'll show you both your paid and your free stuff so that you can look through everything and get right at it. So as you create your plan and you go through these and you're taking a look at what you need to cover, you've got lots of great resources. But remember, the idea isn't to cover everything or every possibility, but to go deep and build them as problem solvers and help them make those connections. And that's going to give you more bang for your buck as you finish out the school year and allow you to get some extra time, as you don't have to spend quite as much time reteaching. Now, I know some of those special ed students, they do have issues with their memories and that long-term or even short-term memory, depending on the situation. That can be a different situation. You're going to really have to help them make those connections, and that can be really tricky. So when you think about your big picture topics, maybe you don't teach every lesson on systems of equations, but you really go deep into making sure that they understand what they're looking for when they calculate, a systems of equations problem. And we talked about those activities, and you guys shared a lot of great stuff. Thank you so much. So if you're interested in more help and you wanted to join and be able to use those resources, I started it at $9.97 so that you could come in and see if it's a good fit for your class. The coupon code wasn't working, so what I did is that link right below on the red, I made it so that when you click on that, let's go back here. I'll just show you what I mean so that you know. When you click on that red link, what it's going to do is it'll show you, I wanted to make sure that you got this page that outlines everything that's in it so that you can look through this and make sure it's a good fit for you. But then when you go, if you go to the monthly and you click that black button, you'll notice that it is the subscriber per month pricing, the $39, not the $49. And when you go ahead and click get started though, I made this special link just for you guys. The price for membership is $9.95 now, and then it would be $39 per month. And of course, the number one question I get, understandably, is do I have to stay for a full year? Absolutely not. I hope you can tell by the way I'm trying to work with you guys. I understand every classroom is different, and it's not going to be the perfect fit for every single classroom. Some of your students are really going to need something different, and I get that. You could come in for the first month. You would get full access to everything. There are trainings in the membership area as well that also have certificates available. And I've had a couple questions on this, so let me take just a minute, make sure I show you. All the webinar, anytime I do a webinar, I take the best one that I recorded and I make sure the members get access to it forever. So this one, for example, on how to use Desmos, if you click on it, once you watch it, it'll turn green. And if you've watched the whole thing, at the end, you can just hit download certificate and you'll have a certificate there to use as you need. And so those are always available to you at any time. And of course, just like I mentioned earlier, if you need a signature, just let me know and I can make sure that you get that. So that includes, and then the other question I get is, can I share it with my students online? So I got this email like 3 or 4 times on Sunday. Can I put it on like Schoology or Edmodo or any of your other learning management systems where you're sharing documents? Can I put it on a private page for just my students? Absolutely. You just can't go sharing it online for the world to see. So that's the only thing that I ask. And then you get access to everything and you can cancel it obviously at any time. And then to get your certificate, let me go ahead and put this right in the chat box for you. All you're going to need to do, oh, it's reloading real quick because I wasn't chatting in there. So is put in your name and then your email address so that I can make sure that you get access. You get emailed your certificate. Somebody asked me, why do you need my email? Well, so I can email the certificate. Otherwise, if you just went in and printed it, it wouldn't have your first and last name on there, which I'm sure your administrator would appreciate you having. So I just want to be able to personalize those certificates for you. And that way it'll be personalized. And then I'll email it to you. I'll have my assistant email that to you first thing in the morning. So what it's going to look like here, and some of you are probably already there. I'm trying to type and talk at the same time, which I'm learning is not working well for me. There we go. So right here, you can just throw in your name and then your email address and hit submit. It'll just say thank you. It won't send you anything right away, and I'll make sure it gets personalized for you, and you get that email tomorrow. And it'll just say A1T certificate. So I really hope you choose to join us. But either way, I really hope this was beneficial to you and helped you out. And then I need to get back and look at that chat box. And I'm wondering, do you have any questions for me? You feel like you've got some good ways to make some connections for your students, some ways to get some activities and how to navigate the site a little bit better, and really make a plan using that skills list and taking a look at what you still need to hit and being able to find great stuff to help your kids retain the information. So I'm really hopeful that this was good to you. And I've really enjoyed having you guys here for sure. You were a fun crew helping. I love watching you guys help each other out. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. And my course, great question, Heather. No, the course is not broken into 2 years. It's all into one. My school did semesters. So when I started creating this, what they did is like semester one was September to January, and then semester two was January to June. So I just kind of split it up into two halves because that's how my school did it. And I just didn't, I was naive enough. My school in Florida did it that way as well. So I was naive enough to think that everybody did it that way. And I've learned otherwise that they haven't. But yeah, we can go ahead and throw those skills list all on one page if you want. But yeah, it's not meant to be covered in 2 years, just into 1 year. But we could, I don't remember, Heather, if you're going to need it a little bit longer. So depending on your needs, I will work with individual members to help them figure out how to get through it so that they don't feel overwhelmed, because that is not the idea. It's supposed to go the other way and make you feel a little bit better. Jessica, I'm so glad you are ready to make a plan for the remainder of the year. That will be fabulous. Okay, so Jody, I have been thinking of switching my order of teaching because I feel that I missed some of it because it's not done once state assessment. So revamping the order of teaching without getting new books is a big help. Yes, it can, these units were set up in this order, but for the most part, they can be switched around depending on your needs, which is really helpful, and then if you need help with that, as always, I'm always willing to help. Let me know if there's something I can do. Okay, so I'm just reading Heather's here. So we have 40-minute periods, but we're breaking it up into 2 years for the SPED guys. So breaking that up into semester one, I can do first. And yes, that would be the perfect way to do it. I'm so glad to hear with only 40 minutes. I'm almost wondering if your kiddos, just from my experience with special ed students, they need more concrete, smaller chunks at a time. So that might be a really big win-win. I would do it that way. Maybe you could even do I would make sure to hit the fluency both days. All of a sudden I had like a flashback of students saying to me, every time I get it, you move to something new. And that is so frustrating. So, maybe working in that fluency and just building it up a little bit so they can feel that success, every 2 days. That might be a really big win. I'm excited to hear that they're giving you that time. I was worried when you said 40 minutes with special ed kids. I was concerned. So that might be a great solution for you. I'm glad to hear that. Great. Well, I hope the delay seems to be a little bit long, so I'm sorry I'm holding out. I just don't want to leave if you guys are still asking some questions. This is great. I love the discussion. Yeah, just when I get it, you make it a little bit harder. Sometimes what I was doing, Heather, for some of my kiddos is I was almost giving them a little bit of the easy and a little bit of the hard. And then the very next day, I would give them just different numbers or different, problems, but the same exact thing. And we go through it again so that they wouldn't feel like it was harder. They felt like they got to be successful for a little bit. Jody said, I have been thinking of switching the order that I teach for my textbooks. I didn't buy them. The person before me did. Yeah, you want to get the harder stuff sooner. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I've been teaching slow is a tough subject and taught around Christmas. That can be really, yeah. I'm really careful, like what I teach right before spring break, what I teach right before the exams, because kids start kind of getting antsy and spacey. Yeah, sometimes it's really good. I think it's better to pick and choose what your order depending on your students' needs. I think you're really on the right track there, Jody. That'd be really, really smart. I love you guys are really a great group. It's really fun to kind of brainstorm with you. This has been great. I'm really enjoying this evening. There we go. All right. Yeah, the experience, teaching is hard and it's an art. I really believe it's an art. It takes years to kind of figure it out and how things are going to fit and where kids are going to struggle. And, February in Michigan, getting kids to do a tough unit would is it's just crazy, and you're just going to drive yourself insane. So yeah, I've always like looked at what am I teaching in February and how do I need to rearrange that. There's been times I've taken that statistics unit and put it in the middle of February because I know that the kids enjoy it and it will keep them motivated. It's called self-preservation, and help, why not go with the flow of what the students need though? I mean, it sounds silly, but why not make it easier for yourself and for them to get through the year successfully and enjoy it, hopefully, and come out feeling successful. Well, we are pushing that 9:30 time. I'm sure you guys have tons going on, as we all do this time of year. Thank you so much again. If you ever have a question or want to get in touch with me after this, or think of another question or a comment that you'd love to share, I always love hearing from you. You can just go ahead and click on my email address at the top in the red bar. It's on every page of the website. And feel free to drop me a line anytime. But thank you so much for coming this evening. And I've really enjoyed spending this time with you. Thanks again. You are very welcome.